Okay, very good. And I guess there's some other moral questions that we try and ask people in the vote check sessions. Gay marriage is the big one that students are quite interested in. Are you in favour of getting rid of the discrimination against same-sex couples being allowed to marry?
Well, I think it's a human right issue, basically, and I find it extraordinary that we're still having these discussions. And I suppose the only thing I'd say about it is that while I think that anybody who loves any couple that loves each other should be able to get married, and that their property rights should be the same, their ability to raise and adopt children should be the same, no matter what their gender.
Okay.
I would be a little bit wary of the state imposing something on the different religions around whether or not you should be able to marry in a certain church. I think that's that's a decision for churches to make, but I do think it's a rights issue. It's not a political issue.
So it sounds like you're pretty much totally in favour of gay marriage being a right, with the caveat of churches having their own policy on who they have what ceremonies they allow. So isn't the last Labour government's civil unions a bit of a cop-out then? Because it wouldn't extend the right to marriage to gay?
No, I don't think you could describe civil unions as a cop-out. I think it was a great step forward and showed us evolving as a society and becoming much more mature. And so, it's just one step forward. Look, these things have to happen as community discussions, and it's really important that we have them.
Okay. Okay, what other moral things people want to know about? God. Do you believe in God?
I'm not a practicing, I don't practice any religion. I come from a Catholic background. I'm pretty agnostic, really, but I think coming from a Catholic background, you can never quite escape it. And when I'm in a tight spot, I find myself saying the odd Hail Mary.
Wow, okay. Okay, very interesting. So in fact, just before before the meeting started, we talked a bit about your personal life and just the issue of politicians being under scrutiny for their personal lives. I mean, you seem pretty open. You tweet all the time, you say a lot about what you're doing. Where are the boundaries? Or should there be boundaries? Or how do you feel about that?
I do think there should be boundaries, and I think they should be respected because politicians are human beings and are entitled to a personal life. I think that, social media is allowing people to have much more direct contact with politicians, and it's sort of up to the politician really as to how much they're going to talk about their personal life. But I do think, as with any human being, that you should be able to have your boundaries respected, and the things that you do in your personal life respected. So I tweet a lot, but I don't talk a lot about. I might talk about how I'm feeling about things, but I don't talk a lot about what I do personally. Right.
I guess some people have described you as quite an emotional person. You feel quite strongly about things. So I mean, does that resonate with you, that you're an emotional politician? Or
I describe myself as a conviction politician. Okay. I do feel as if I'm on a bit of a mission to change things and do what I can while I'm here. I don't see the point in doing it otherwise. And I guess emotion comes into it. I'm quite passionate about lots of things. There's very few things that bore me, and I try to have an opinion on most things, but I certainly don't pretend to be an expert on many things. But I like to think that people need to know that that they ask you a question, you're going to give them an answer. And I also think it's important to say that I'm not always right.
Wow. Okay. How often are you right then?
And also the other thing to say is that it's okay to acknowledge that your views change over time. So one of the things that really bugs me about our political discourse is that something somebody said 20 years ago is held against them, though their views may have changed.
Yeah, but isn't it the case that sometimes a politician in particular might say something at one point of time and then have a contradictory position, and they've never sort of explained or given any sort of explanation for why they've flip-flopped on something. So
I think
it's
important. Yeah, I think you should be held to account, absolutely. But I think it's, and I think you should give explanations if you've changed your views. Okay. But I think changing your views is actually can be a sign of maturity.
Absolutely. Now, luckily, we've got another question from the floor. Nikki Lomax is an honours student in politics.
I just find it really interesting how apathetic students are when all this stuff matters a lot. But do you think that New Zealand should have more civics education and politics education from a younger age?
Absolutely. That's one of the things I'm really passionate about. One of the reasons I'm in politics is to try and change the way we do politics and bring politics and people closer together. You've got to start that at an early age, and I think there should be politicians in schools doing forums, having discussions, and kids should feel able to access their politicians and also become political themselves and be encouraged to become political.
Do you know if that was discussed in the sense that, I mean, with NCA there are like subjects on pretty much anything. You can do law and psychology and anthropology, think paper things, but you can't do politics?
Well, I think you should be able to, and civics is in the New Zealand curriculum as far as I know. I'm in the process, I'm sure somebody will ask me about this, but I'm in the process of finishing Labour's first open government policy, in which it will have a little bit in it around strengthening the civics part of the curriculum and encouraging that to be used more. So I think, one of our big problems is that we are apathetic, that there is too much distance between politics and people, and that we don't encourage enough activism. It doesn't matter what part of the political spectrum you're on particularly. I think just being activist is a really important thing.
Why do you think that happened? Because, I mean, we used to be so, when you think about issues like the Springbok tour and then protests in the early 90s and stuff, people used to get much more riled up about it. What do you think's changed?
Well, lots have changed. I think I think politics has become much more distanced from people, and people don't trust politicians, and it's cynicism. So when you feel cynical about something, you don't want to engage with it, which is one of the great things about social media, is that you can actually start to have direct conversations with politicians. There's criticism around the pros and cons of actually doing that. And I'm certainly in the vanguard for that criticism. I don't really mind that, because if you can keep on doing it, then it actually becomes part of just an ordinary discourse that we have. The role of mainstream media has been really important in that as well, in the sense of keeping politics and people apart. And politicians are held to a degree of public scrutiny that nobody else in society is. Like chief executives of corporations aren't held to that level of public scrutiny. And of course you're representing people, so you do need to be held to account. But your human frailties are, I guess, put on public display, and we like to throw stones a lot.
Now, there might be some questions in the Twitter sphere. Finn, what's coming through?
I think we had a question from here, pretty much asked already, but on the whole issue of, my own question on the whole issue of media and politicians, there's an old story about Duncan Garner going into a room of prospective journalists and saying all politicians are liars. As a former member of the media yourself, how have your views on this changed, and also does that attitude from the media frustrate you?
Yes and no. The media is there to, I guess, inherently distrust and challenge whatever it is that you say, and to provide a counter to what you say you believe, and hold you to account on it if your views change. But when you say, when somebody says that goes in with a view that all politicians are liars, it immediately sets a frame for politicians, and and I say to any prospective new politician coming into Parliament, that's really hard, because most politicians that I've met are genuine people who hold really strong beliefs about things, and it's not an easy life, and you're constantly on display. So you, as I said, you don't always get it right, and being, you know, somebody asked me, and I can't remember, at a forum recently, might have been actually on backbenchers, have you ever lied? And it's like, oh God, what's the answer to that? You know,
well, what was your answer?
Yes, probably.
Yeah.
You know,
Sure.
and whether it's intentionally or inadvertently, I don't know. You know, that's when the Catholic in me comes out, because, you know, you used to have to go to confession and confess all your lies and all of those sorts of things. But, you know, people are human, but I believe that most politicians do try and do the right thing. The system that they're in, and in order to get things done, can compromise you, and that's the issue, one of the issues that I think needs to change or could change. And it's that adversarial system that we operate in, which inherently puts you in constant conflict.
So